Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Good Vibes podcast, where we spotlight bold thinkers, practitioners, and founders building new paths forward in wellness. If you're new here and this conversation adds value, please consider sharing it forward. It helps us keep building this village. Today's guest is Bethany Rife, mom of 6, a farm-based practitioner, and a frontline voice helping reframe what it actually means to raise a healthy family outside the medical industrial model. She's here to break open the term crunchy, what it means, why it's been misrepresented, and what parents really need when they're navigating vaccines, early nutrition, and mainstream healthcare that doesn't always serve the child, the mother, or the bigger picture. Let's dive in. Bethany, the word crunchy gets tossed around a lot, sometimes playfully, but often dismissively. What does it actually mean to you, and how's the label shaped the way people see your work?
So I think crunchy can be used in a lot of different ways, and a lot of people use it to term multiple different things. And so I think we have to be careful. I don't think it means any one thing. So usually it can range from, yeah, this is crunchy. It just means like you're using natural remedies first for your medical care and then maybe moving on if you have to. Or I've had, it definitely have seen people use it to term like they won't use any traditional medicine and just only, very far crunchy, I suppose. They glass everything, you get all the toxins out of your home. It can mean a variety of things. I've even seen people equate it with, maybe certain diets or certain things. But overall, it means trying to live a more natural, organic lifestyle in general. And everybody kind of varies on how far they go into that thing and into that. I feel like everybody kind of starts like with some minimal crunchiness and then kind of moves along the spectrum, taking more and more steps as they go. So for me and my family, that has gradually done that. So in my we definitely try to do natural remedies and supplements and vitamins before using, antibiotics. I do that with both my own children and my patients. And then also trying to do things, like avoiding, where we can, avoiding plastics if we can, when it makes sense. Trying to eat organic, trying to do things, more homegrown and more and more homemade rather than boxed things. So that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're raising 6 kids on a working farm, and you're doing so outside of many of the conventional pediatric structures. What have you learned about child wellness that most people misunderstand?
I definitely I think one of the big things is everybody wants kids to be clean and we're wanting them to be germ free. And I mean, my kids play out in the dirt and maybe they wash their hands before they eat something. So it's only something I ask them to do, but they also pick things straight out of the garden and eat them. Um, they so I definitely think that, I don't know, farm life, as we like to call it, it is it is more natural. You get exposed to a lot more things, but my kids are healthy. They, sure, we get our illnesses like everyone else, but they're never significant. And I think that I don't I'm always cautious about that too, because just because you do all these things doesn't mean you're gonna get the perfect, result or the desired result. But definitely striving for that for sure. But I enjoy, all these little guys running around and being outside and doing all the things that they can do. It's a lot of fun. And but I think that's one of the main things is most of the germs out there that we catch from other people. Being out dirty and with the animals, even a lot of the animal bugs don't transfer to us. The dirt out there, sure, there are some bugs that live in the dirt, but most of those our bodies can fight off just fine, and we don't ever notice. It's really the things that make us sick we catch from other people. And I think getting you know, just being out in the world and in the dirt and in the nature actually promotes wellness. rather than the other way around.
Imagine that. Let's talk vaccines. You've created a system that doesn't rely on them. What's the biggest misconception about vaccine-free parenting? What's the one thing that you wish new or expecting parents could hear without judgment?
Without judgment, the biggest thing is that you get to make your own choice. Probably the biggest lie is that your kids have to have vaccines to go to school. The school oftentimes is not even telling you that you don't have to have the vaccines to go to school. They'll tell you you need to go get these so you can enroll. But the actual, at least in Texas and in most states, not all states, but most states, you just need to sign a form, get a form from the health department that says you've decided not to vaccinate for whatever reason. You don't have to put a reason. There doesn't have to be one. But you fill out a form through the state, you hand it in to the state school, and they have to accept it. So that don't ever let somebody, or for any reason, coerce you to make a decision to vaccinate your kid when that's not what you want to do. I want parents to have the freedom and that it's their decision and not anyone else's. I think the other big misconception is that we have placebo-controlled trials and safety studies on these, and we don't. A lot of them say they have a placebo, but they used the placebo. If you dig into the study, the placebo was just everything else in the vaccine except for the antigen was taken out. So it still has all the preservatives and all the other ingredients that haven't been tested. Or many of them were used against what they considered an inert substance, but it was just a previously studied vaccine, which they studied the same way and was never done. They need to be studied against like saline solution, something that is truly inert. And most have not. Actually, I think all of them have, if they were ever studied with a true placebo, it was for a short period of time. They did that for a few days or a few months, and then they vaccinated the control group. And so that kind of destroys it.
From natural feeding to commercial baby formulas, the default options, they feel broken. So where do you see the biggest gaps in early childhood care, and what would you fix first?
That's kind of harder because most of my patients breastfeed. And so, I haven't ever used formula, so I don't, so I feel a little bit like I don't know a whole lot, but, I do say a lot, like definitely read the labels, know what's in and what this formula is made of. There is one marketed in the US that's made from breast milk. That might be a really good option. Some of them are made from, they have ingredients like corn solids or high fructose corn syrup, that kind of thing. They get a lot of fake things in there. And so trying to get something more natural, the formulas from Europe actually look a lot better ingredients wise than the US formulas. The US formulas look really gross when you read the ingredients. So that is something that I do recommend to my patients is buy formulas from overseas. And they're readily available. You can get them online, you can get them on Amazon. The other thing that I have liked, because a couple years or so ago, we had that big formula shortage. And there are a couple formulas out there to make your own formula at home. And I think as long as your kid is healthy, maybe a few months old would be better than doing it right at first because their immune systems are so immature. But these at-home formulas, like you've got to get a good one. So I would definitely talk with somebody that understands this before doing it, because there are recipes that I saw, going over Facebook that I was like, oh no, please don't feed your child that. But there are a couple good ones out there, and that you can buy the ingredients, you mix it all together. I definitely got pushback when I suggested that because people were saying, well, it's not sterile. Well, how many times? I mean, the whole reason we had the formula shortage is because the formula company had some sort of contamination. These kids are putting their hands in their mouths. I don't know that by the time they're 4 or 5 months old, you're feeding them food, which is also not sterile. So I don't know about that, but be careful. Wash your hands. Yeah, don't get it contaminated. But I kind of like the at home made or the foreign made formulas better than I like the U.S. made basic formulas. That's my so far take on it. And definitely like the parents, figuring out what's best for your family and making your decision based on your baby and your values and that kind of thing. And this is a lot of times in my patients, this is a very emotional decision because they really want to nurse and for whatever reason they can't. And it's hard and it's sad. And I know that's really hard on these moms, but just I'm always trying to support them in that. Like, I mean, there was a long period of time, most of us were probably raised um, on formula. There was a lot of us because formula was very popular for a long period of time and nursing was like taboo. So, I mean, we're all okay. And so it's going to be okay. And when the nursing isn't working, getting the appropriate help, get a good lactation consultant, talk with a doctor. There's a lot of other resources out there as far as like tongue clippings and those kind of things. I think sometimes they're really needed and they really help. And sometimes they weren't needed in the first place. And the parents go around all these things and nothing fixes anything because that wasn't the problem. But so definitely like get a lot of opinions, I guess, is my thought about it so that and do what you feel is best for your child.
Yeah, I mean, so in general, you're obviously not anti-medicine, but you are outspoken about the system. In your experience, then, what does a truly empowered parent need to feel confident stepping outside of the mainstream?
I think just using some common sense, like I don't be afraid to Google things, but don't take everything that you Google as like that's the answer because obviously it's always going to give you worst case scenario and says these horrible things. But I've also had parents that have said, "Hey, I saw this. Is that something we should think about?" Or, and often there's a lot of times that they'll be like, "Well, this was the diagnosis that the internet came up with." And I'll be like, "Oh, that's a good thought. Let me look at that because I don't have it's been 10 years since I was in medical school. I'm not going to think of every single option every single time. We're just humans. And so I appreciate that. And I think what parents need to be open-minded um, and not looking at just this is what the expert says, so this is the answer, recognizing that there is an equal and opposite expert that thinks the opposite thing for almost everything. And so just really doing your own homework but being careful looking at sources because you can get sucked into things. Look for those trusted people that have the background and the education to be able to evaluate the expert and do what makes sense. Like a lot of these things, it's like, well, this is what the expert says, but when you compare that with what they said last year, it doesn't make any sense. And so being willing to be like, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to look for a different answer. So I think that's one of the bigger things is being able to keep looking and keep talking, and keep asking, and not just being stuck in one train of thought. And knowing that things may have multiple answers. Just because this works for that kid doesn't mean it's going to work for your kid necessarily. And being willing to continue to try the next thing. What's the next thing we should try? So a lot of it is endurance.
That's astute. That's a lot of great advice. If you were to let me put you on the spot, then if somebody were to listen to this and they were to walk away with just one shift in how they view parenting or care, and you were to put that in one sentence, what would you hope that would be?
Well, I haven't mentioned this previously, but my main thing is to seek God's will and know your Bible, study your Bible, know what God says, and trust Him because that is truth. And I don't know if you wanted me to go that direction, but that is absolute truth. And so finding truth and the truth and not just and not just whatever somebody else says is the truth, but knowing that this is the true truth and he does have the answers. And so that's my main thing. But outside of that, I think it's just that you're this child's parent and no one else knows that child better than you do. and you fight for what you know and believe that your child needs, wherever you have to go to do that.
Bethany, thank you. This kind of conversation, it doesn't just challenge the norm. It reclaims the language, the tone, and the intention behind how we care for our families. For everyone listening, if this opened something up for you, like it and share it. That's how we expand the village. And if you want more on vaccine-free care, integrative pediatrics, or regenerative family health, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to continue having more conversations with folks like Bethany here. Till next time, stay strong, stay sharp, stay aligned, and keep up the good vibes. Thanks so much again, Bethany.
Thank you.